I disliked this book so much that I didn't even keep my copy of it. So I've got nothing to wave around here, pretend like I'm holding a book. First, let's talk about one of the more popular young adult queer novels in the last few years. It was turned into a movie recently, and the book is called Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. Aristotle and Dante was written by author Benjamin Alire Sáenz. It was one of the worst books I think I've ever read. Now, before I get into that, I want to talk about some of the things that I do like about it. It's a young adult novel, and I'm a huge advocate for YA. There's so many adults, and a lot of my friends actually, who haven't read a book since like high school. And I think that's kind of crazy. But I've noticed like anytime I ask them about books and things that they're interested in, they talk about like really complex books, dense books, geared towards adults. And that kind of turns them off from reading. And I can totally understand that because adult books kind of suck. I'm talking about like super dense, like 800-page books that are geared towards older adults. Or those super lame books that you see in grocery stores. So then I suggest reading young adult novels because honestly, they're a lot easier to understand, they're way more digestible, and they're a lot darker than other books. Aristotle and Dante is one of those books. It's super easy to read, it flows very easily, and it's super easy to understand and connect with. Another thing that I do really like about it is that it's got a great world built. It's set in the 80s, it's in El Paso, Texas, and it focuses on Mexican-American culture. I feel like those aren't really elements that you see in books, especially not tied together. So having that really niche and cultural place is exciting to read about. It's not the same areas like Los Angeles and New York, and it's not centered on a bunch of white people. But that's kind of where the good things end. I think a lot of people connected to this because it had unique elements that we don't usually see, like the Mexican-American culture and gender roles in that culture, especially in queer relationships. So it's one of those things where we're happy that this exists, but it could be done much better. And by better, I mean way less problematic. So my main issue with this is the gender roles. Because yeah, it depicts a queer relationship or the developing queer relationship between teenagers Aristotle and Dante, but they just play so hard to gender roles. They have the sort of relationship that justifies people asking which one of you is the male and which one is the female when it's two males in a relationship. Well, that's the point of a gay relationship, is that they're two males. There is no female. That's kind of what makes it gay, you know? They're not two teenagers trying to pave their own way and figure out what kind of relationship works for them. Instead, they basically mirror a straight relationship. And not just any straight relationship, but one that caters so strictly to gender roles. For example, Dante is more of a feminine character. He's very artistic, he's very sensitive, he openly cries. Pretty much anything that's traditionally feminine are the qualities that Dante has. While Aristotle is the exact opposite. He's got a lot of traditional masculine qualities. He's really bad at communication. He's not great at showing emotion. He's very focused on like being muscly and athletic. His father is a war vet and his brother's in prison. So he kind of has like the harder life, less privileged life. And that bothers me so much because these characters are not super layered. It's very clear that one is supposed to be the feminine one and one is supposed to be the masculine one. And who has trouble admitting their feelings throughout the book? The masculine one, Aristotle. A lot of it is pretty predictable just based on their character traits. Aristotle is also a bit of a white knight character, which is my least favorite trope of all time. For those that don't know what that is, it's basically like Harry Potter, where he can do no wrong. Everything he touches turns to gold. He tries to save everyone. He's very black and white. This is bad, this is good, and I only do good things. So that's the Aristotle character. And who's his damsel in distress? Dante. He feels the need to save Dante multiple times in the story. I won't give those spoilers on what exactly those things are, but Dante is basically super helpless unless Aristotle comes and saves him. there are some themes that I really do like in this book, and it's kind of a shame the way that they're presented because I don't think they're presented super well, but I think they're so important to include. One of the main things is gay shame, where these characters feel very shameful of who they are, especially in relation to their Mexican American culture. And addressing that is really important because I think that's an intersectionality that doesn't get addressed enough. That's something really important and fun to read because I don't feel like we see a whole lot of that, especially in young adult fiction. Another issue in this is trans representation. So if you look on any Reddit page, you'll see that a lot of people accuse the author of being transphobic. I'm not sure if it's as far as being transphobic, but it is definitely problematic. Like, the tropes that are included in this book are things that are just so outdated despite it coming out recently, fairly recently. There is violence to trans people in this. Here's the thing with having that in a book or media, TV, movies, anything, is that one, we're super tired of it. Like, that's an exhausted trope now. The kill your gays trope is kind of old, and we're looking more towards queer joy and things of that matter. But also, if you're going to have some sort of violence, not just to trans people, but just to anyone, and there's no redemption, then there's no point in having it. Then you're just having violence to have violence. Not having redemption or a lesson learned or have a warning come from that's really toxic. Then you're just bashing on trans people or whoever just for the sake of doing it. So that was a huge problem for me in this book. I had to read it for one of my queer studies class, and we discussed it as a group after, and I think I was the only one who disliked the book. So many people said it was life-changing for them, and they loved the book and the story of it. I felt so out of place in that discussion because I was pretty harsh about saying how I felt about it, kind of saying the same things I am now, and just nobody agreed with it, which is fine, but I feel like there's a difference between wanting a book to be good and it actually being good. I really wanted this book to be good because, like I said, the world is great. I think the premise is awesome. The theme is there. Just so many things are working well for it, but the things that were bad and problematic were just so big that I couldn't overlook it. This would be a really progressive book if it was written in like the 80s or 90s, but having it written today, it could have done so much better. I am curious about the movie, and I might check that out. Maybe they cleaned it up a bit and got rid of the parts that were problematic. Also, I think there's a sequel to this as well. As far as recommendations, honestly, I would recommend this book because I noticed that a lot of people did connect with it, and if someone connects with it, then I'm happy that they're doing that. I also just hope that they can see the parts that are problematic. Like I mentioned before in other videos, if you read a book, it's okay to not like all of it or to not dislike all of it. You can find important elements in each book that you connect with. I think with this one, there was things that I connected with. I did like the cultural aspect, and I did like the romance part, I guess. I don't read a lot of romance books, actually. I dislike them very much. But this one was one of the better ones because it didn't solely focus on their relationship. It kind of focused on them figuring out their identities separately and then coming together with that knowledge. I think that's really sweet. The next book I'm reviewing coincides with the Chicago video that I uploaded earlier this month and the uncensored Chicago video that I have exclusively on my Patreon. It's this book here called Queer Legacies that I got at Unabridged Books in Chicago. When I'm traveling and I go to bookstores, I look for first the LGBTQ plus section and then second local authors. This is both. So this was an absolute gem that I was so happy to come across. Coincidentally, it's by an author that I've read plenty of times before, and I didn't realize it until I finished the book. It's by John D'Amelio, who is a historian from Chicago that's written quite a few books that I absolutely love. and I'm sure I'll be reviewing at some point. This is a nonfiction book, and I swear I'm going to sell all the viewers on nonfiction books because I really love them. And I know most people prefer the fiction books, especially fantasy, but God, I love nonfiction books so much. The way that it's written is really unique. Each chapter is dedicated to an oral history from the archives in Chicago. What oral history is exactly that. It's queer people talking about their experiences, because so much of our history has been erased that universities and archives have been collecting stories all around the world, really, and they have them saved. So what John D'Amelio did was go and he went and he listened to these oral histories, and he wrote about a lot of them. Each chapter dedicated to a specific person, and a lot of it ranges. That's something that I really love about this, is because it tackles a lot of intersectionality. Like one chapter will be about a lesbian immigrant. Another chapter would be about a gay black man. And it talks about each of their experiences in Chicago, in the area. It focuses a lot on how each queer experience is very different. No two people will have the same queer experiences, but especially people of intersectionalities, they have something completely different than, say, a gay white man. One of my favorite quotes from this is, "Cultural silence must be broken at the voice of oppression." I think there are plenty of interpretations of that, but what I get from it is that as soon as the voice of oppression becomes loud, the silence of culture has to stop. We need to be louder. Culture needs to be much louder, whether that's queer, whether it's intersectional, whether it's being a person of color, a transgender person, anything. This book also talks a lot about different niche groups within the queer community. So they're talking about the 70s and 80s, the athletic gays or the artsy gays, social queers, religious people, all kinds of different groups within the LGBTQ community. And it's okay to have those differences and to almost not touch at all until it's time to band together against the common enemy of oppression. Having smaller communities within the big community is really important, and it's great that all of our interests can be met. But when it's time to fight together, it's time to fight together. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked again, talking about the contents of the book rather than really reviewing it. As you can probably see, I write a lot in my books and highlight a lot. The more highlights and annotations I have, the more I like the book, I think. Actually, no, that's not correct, because there's some that I talk so much about that I'll write just like pages and pages of how much I hate it. This one's not one of those books, though. This book I actually do really like, and I'm so glad that I came across it. It's a whole different world when you randomly come across a book that you're not even looking for, and it's so satisfying. There is something that I don't like about this, though. John D'Amelio doesn't go super deep into each person's story. He kind of talks generally by the end of each chapter about that person, almost like he wants somebody else to do the research, or that he's done the foundational research, found a unique story, and wants to inspire other people to write it. That I don't think I've seen in another book before, but that was the vibe that I got from this. And I don't know, it's kind of understandable. Like, who has the time to write a full story about each person? And also, who has the time to go dig through the archives to find these stories, to inspire people to write other books? I'm indifferent to that idea. I'm not sure if I completely like it or completely dislike it. I can see the benefit, but as a reader, I wanted to know more about these people, so I wish it was longer and I wish it was a little bit more detailed. But then again, you have like 30, 40 chapters, each one relating to a different issue or person, specifically in Chicago. So that's kind of hard to include a lot more information. But if you're looking to write a queer book, this would be a good place to look. There's a lot of inspiration in this. There's a lot of different characters, a lot of different intersectionalities, and a lot of backstory, which is perfect for characters. This would also be a good book for people just getting into nonfiction or curious about it, or want to switch over from fiction to nonfiction for a little bit. It's an easy read. It's a super short book. And overall, it's pretty solid. A lot of good queer shit. If you're enjoying these book reviews and my travel vlogs, please like and subscribe to the page. And if you want to get into more details with exclusive videos, access to Discord, and the community, check out my Patreon.